Today we're going to show you what we think is arguably the best all-round loop walk you can do in Edinburgh. A walk that will take in some of the best parts of the city beyond its historic centre. If like us you're into seeing a city on foot and have a few hours to spare, this walk starting from Edinburgh city centre will take you through some very interesting and historic parts of the city. As you can see in the clips that are showing whilst I waffle through this intro, you won't regret doing this circular walk. So come along for the ride and see what the majority of other Edinburgh videos don't show you because it involves actual walking. Footnote, I'm referring to the many repetitive YouTube videos that only show the centre of Edinburgh. Yes, it's great, but there is a lot more to see than just the city centre. And we're going to show you one example of it here. So I'm not sure how many tourists actually come this far down through Leith Walk. So this is known as Leith Walk. And I reckon probably most tourists don't go much beyond the old town or the new town. But we highly recommend walking down towards Leith, which is actually a separate part of Edinburgh. It used to be a completely separate part from what I know historically. And the two joined together not so long ago. Several decades ago. I can't remember the exact history.
And I think the inhabitants of Leith had voted against being part of Edinburgh, but that was not taken into account for some reason.
Yeah, so there's some kind of rivalry between Leith and Edinburgh City. But in any case, it's really worth walking down Leith Walk if you're heading towards Portabello, because there's some really cool buildings and historical sites to see along the way. Speaking of the boundary between Leith and Edinburgh, this is the boundary bar in which Edinburgh, you can see on the sign on the right here, it says Edinburgh, and on the left it says Leith, and that's the boundary between Edinburgh and Leith. And apparently there used to be different licensing laws for people drinking there, so you could drink later in one than the other, so the bar was able to divide itself in two at a certain hour, and people could continue drinking. Some old industrial works. So whilst Leith is still more affordable than the old town, it's being gentrified, which is a word being thrown around a lot these days, but I would say there's a lot of negatives to gentrification. You know, cities are no longer really affordable as places to live, and Leith is somewhat still affordable, but not compared to what it used to be. So yeah, it's good that it's being rejuvenated because it was more of a sort of industrial area in the past from what I understand, and it's next to the port of Edinburgh, but it's there's a lot of fancy kind of coffee shops and stores, boutique type stores, if I swing the camera around here, which is good in one sense, but bad in another, because of course rent prices and house prices are through the roof. Let us know in the comments what you think about gentrification. Not really a word I like. You think of where it originates from, the gentry. It's being kind of hijacked as a word, I think, these days. If you have the time, we'd highly recommend that you walk around Leith itself or come back another day to explore Leith. It's a really, really interesting quarter of the city. And if you want to learn more about the history of Leith and the history of Edinburgh in general, check out the YouTube channel Ed Explores Scotland. He's got some superb videos on the history of Leith and the history of Edinburgh, comparing old photographs and old maps with how Leith and Edinburgh look today. So definitely worth checking that channel out. Highlight of this type of walk is really all the nooks and crannies of Edinburgh. There's so many side streets and laneways to explore. It's one of the great things about Edinburgh is that it's a lived-in city. So from an urban perspective, you actually feel like it's what cities used to be, where people live. People live in the city centre. They don't just commute from dormitory towns like many cities today, or most cities in Europe today. People don't get to live in the city itself unless you're filthy rich. But unfortunately, Edinburgh has become increasingly like that. Even though it's lived in, the prices of property are through the roof. So people are being pushed further and further out. But it still retains that charm of being lived in. There's a recent article in the Irish Times, and it was about loneliness and how Ireland is the loneliest place in Europe, officially now, it seems, according to some study. And a lot of that is attributed to the fact that people don't live in the city. People are just sleeping in dormitory towns, commuting maybe 4 hours a day, and they don't live in the city. There's no sense of community. So I wonder where Edinburgh would rank, because I kind of get the sense there's a lot more community here.
Yeah, in this village.
So you can see all these beautiful old houses, a lot of them Victorian or Georgian era, some Edwardian. Not sure exactly what these ones are. Let me know in the comments if you know which era these buildings date for. If you're interested in doing the walk that we're doing, it's very well signposted and also very cyclable. So if you rent a bike or have a bike, you can cycle to Portabello.
If you don't have a bike, however, and you're walking, just make sure that you stay on the side of the path that is for walkers, because the cyclists will run you over.
One of the huge positives of Edinburgh is it's full of parks and green spaces, and the sea is nearby, and you have the Pentland Hills, which is some kind of small mountains that are nearby, bus ride away. And of course you have Arthur's Seat, which you can walk to the top of for great views. So yeah, if you like the outdoors and you like walking and cycling, there's plenty of things to do. Very mindful making this video that there's about 1 billion other videos on YouTube covering Edinburgh. So hopefully this one shows you something new, this walk, this kind of loop walk to Portabello beach, which is quite interesting. So as you can see, it's following a lot of a cycle lane. As we said earlier, you have to really watch out not to get run over by cyclists. Especially when you're walking down Leith Walk, there's so many Deliveroo drivers everywhere, and they really are crazy, some of them, how they almost run you over. So, yeah.
It's just, it's not the first time we've been 1 inch from being run over.
Yep, there's certainly more to Edinburgh than the Royal Mile, where you see most of the tourists congregating around. I reckon that most of them don't actually walk much further than the old town or the new town, but there's actually tons of interesting places around Edinburgh to walk to. As long as you like walking a little bit and make a little bit of effort, there's loads to see. There's loads of little kind of villages surrounding the new town and old town, like Stockbridge, Dean Village, and Trinity is quite nice. And there's some really great places like Queen's Ferry that you can take the train to, North Queen's Ferry, South Queen's Ferry, and lots of walks that you can do. In fact, St. Andrew's pilgrimage begins from, I think it's North Queen's Ferry, on the other side of the River Forth. There's one small section of this walk that takes you next to a busy road, but if you're cycling, you can still cycle here on the pavement for pedestrians and for cyclists, so it's not so bad, and it's pretty short. And before you know it, you're by the sea. These old Victorian railings, these iron cast railings behind us, it's really nice colour, and you see the rust on them from the salty sea that smashes over them during storms. It really gives a cool sense of that kind of coastal feel I really like about old Victorian seaside resorts. We're not yet in Portabello, but we can see it up ahead of us, and yeah, it's really nice to be able to walk by the beach in a city. Like basically that's what we were in Edinburgh. It's just a walk away. It only takes about an hour from the top of Leith to walk to here, and a little bit further on to get to Portabello, which, if I flip the camera around, is just up here. So we're almost there. So there's not many cities that offer that kind of walkability in Europe. Edinburgh, I think, is one of the best.
Yeah, and when you arrive here, just really feels different. It doesn't feel like a city. It feels a bit quieter, a bit slower. So that's nice as well, to be in a town, but you're still in a city.
The only complaint that we have about Edinburgh really is the price of accommodation is ridiculous. Frankly, really ridiculous. It's super expensive to visit all year round pretty much. And yeah, overpriced like everywhere, in my opinion, which is a big shame because it's kind of making it unaffordable, frankly.
It seems that low season prices are a thing of the past.
Yeah, you don't really see low season prices anymore. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts on traveling are. But yeah, for us, we're finding it increasingly unaffordable to go almost anywhere, especially in Britain and Ireland. Edinburgh might be expensive, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's probably one of the best cities to visit in Europe, in my opinion. Certainly one of the most walkable. Now let's enjoy a quick walk through the Victorian seaside resort of Portabello. As with many seaside resorts in the UK, Portobello had its heyday back in the Victorian era. It is still a fantastic place to visit and definitely one of the highlights of this walk. Just watch out for those bikes, because they're coming at you from every direction. But in fairness, it is also a cycleway as well as a pedestrian walkway. Back in the Victorian era, Portobello was a thriving seaside resort complete with a pier, fun fair and saltwater baths. Unfortunately, the pier no longer exists, but there's still some fun fair amusements and there are still the Victorian saltwater baths that you can visit. So if you don't fancy a dip in the North Sea, you have an alternative. Either way, it's an absolutely stunning building. Portabello was once known for its brick-making industry, supplying bricks across the whole of the UK. And in the distance here to the right, you can see a chimney stack, which perhaps belonged to an old brick-making factory. Let me know in the comments if you know what this chimney belonged to. And needless to say, it is quite sad that today there no longer is a brick-making industry in Portabello, at least not that I'm aware of. And as we know all too well, sadly, industry has been on the decline for years in the UK and for most of the Western world. But hey, on the plus side, at least we have some nice chimneys to look at and some beautiful old buildings to look back on. But you know, it's rather unfortunate that we don't have any actual industry left. Nostalgia, I suppose, can only get you so far and keep property and rental prices very, very high. But enough with the cynicism and back to our beautiful walk along Portobello. I mean, to me at least, it's just amazing that you can actually walk here from the city centre. I wonder how many tourists actually walk here. Oh, I'm trying not to be cynical, but I doubt that too many would actually walk from the city centre of Edinburgh, from the old town down to the sea. It's maybe 45 minutes from the old town to walk here. You can obviously take a bus, but I would actually love to know what percentage of tourists even know about Portobello, let alone visit it. And that's why I'm making this video, so you can walk here next time you're in Edinburgh. And I know it can sound a little bit tiring and a little bit cliche, but the best way to see any city or any place really is on foot. And in Edinburgh, you're absolutely spoilt for choice with footpaths, walkways, greenways, trails to everywhere. It's one of the most walkable cities in the world. So put on your walking shoes, get out past the old town. As beautiful as it is, it's well worth walking down through Leith, walking to Portabello, and then walking back up to Duddingston and experiencing Duddingston village, as we'll see a little bit later on. I mean, look at that sandy beach, just look at it. How could you not want to go there and escape all the Harry Potter tourists in the old town? From an architectural perspective, I should also add that these buildings are not just Victorian, they're also from the Georgian era. And let's face it, who doesn't love an alleyway? They make for great photos. Fun fact, there's also some interesting wartime history in Portobello. In August 1940, several unexploded German bombs were found buried deep in Portobello gardens. Some were recovered and detonated, whilst others were left permanently covered under concrete. Portobello was once home to a World War II cryptologist called Ailsa Maxwell, who worked as a cryptologist at Bletchley Park during the Second World War, intercepting and deciphering Axis communications, and played a vital role as part of the Allied intelligence effort. So that was
Portobello's seafront. Now we're going to take a look at its main street.
I must admit that Portobello's main street is a little bit disappointing and looks a little bit on the decline in terms of commerce. There's not a whole lot of shops there. There's some nice arts and crafts shops and some charity shops that are worth having a look in, but sadly there's not a whole lot going on, and yeah, you won't probably spend too much time on the main street. It's just really to pass through. Sadly, it's like that across much of the UK and Ireland. Main streets are on the decline, so yeah, it is what it is. And that's a topic for another video. And that's not to knock Portobello's main street in any way, shape or form. It's still a charming street. It's just a pity that there's not more going on there. And it probably didn't help that by the time we arrived in Portobello's main street that a lot of shops are either closing or had just closed. It was kind of hard to tell what was permanently closed and what had just closed for the day. But either way, these businesses need your customs, so definitely take a look and you will certainly see some interesting arts and crafts shops and charity shops, as I said. And here you see Portabello's police station, which once served as the town hall and was built in 1878. So we're about all Portabello'd out, so we're going to make our way now towards Duddingston village, which is a good 40-minute walk from Portabello, so be prepared. But once you get to Duddingston, it's very nice, and there is a very nice pub there.
What did you think of Portobello's main street?
I think there were quite a few nice shops, like craft shops and second-hand shop, things like that, that were nice, but otherwise it was quite busy with the road, so it kind of lacks a bit of a cozy feel.
Yeah, it's a bit at odds really with the seafront. The seafront, sure, like as a Victorian resort, it's definitely had busier moments in history, but there's quite a lot of fancy houses around, so you'd kind of expect a little more going on the main street. Seems a little sort of strangely quiet.
Yeah.
Each time we go there, so I don't think it's just today. It's a bit lacking, which is interesting because obviously economically it's a affluent area. So we're walking through Duddingston at the moment, which is a suburb of Edinburgh, and we'll be walking around the side of Arthur's Seat past Duddingston Lock, and it's like a little nature reserve, which is quite nice, before we then loop around back towards the meadows. And as you can see in the distance, still some ways away, Arthur's Seat, so still quite a bit to go. If you're doing this walk, you'd want to give yourself a good 4 hours, I'd say. The whole afternoon, certainly 4 to 5 hours. Not that the walk takes that long. Probably the walk's about, if you did it non-stop, it'd be probably 3.5 hours at a reasonably fast pace. But if you want to, have a look around, which obviously most people would, give yourself easily 5 hours.
Take some time to sit by the beach.
Yeah, or go in, have a coffee or tea in one of the nice coffee shops along the seafront. There's places to sit, terraces and so on if the weather's nice. We're now in Duddingston village, which is really a suburb of Edinburgh. And you have this sense that you're in the countryside. Look at these houses. Switch the camera around, you can see in front lots of cute cottages, and it has a real kind of village feel to it, even though it's adjoined completely to the suburbs.
And isn't that where there is the oldest pub in Edinburgh? Around here.
That's right, actually, the Sheep's Head or something it's called. You can see it's a really charming suburb of Edinburgh, all within a short walking distance, because of course we're doing a loop, so we're right now about 2/3 of the way through the walk. That's why we'd highly recommend, if you like walking and if you like getting out and about, it's a great walk to do, to kind of get a feel for Edinburgh. As we said at the very beginning, if you start in the centre around Leith Walk, at the top of Leith Walk, which is a very long street that goes all the way down to the port of Leith, you really get a sense of history and also socio-economic history, because you can see what was sort of, I suppose, a more working class area, and still is in parts, but unfortunately house prices and apartment prices have gone through the roof. So gentrification has seen to it that it's not so easy to afford to live there anymore. But you still get a sense of it's far more rough and ready than the sort of super touristy old town, which of course is beautiful and really nice, but you know, it's got a different atmosphere. Yeah, so the sheep's head, don't know how you pronounce it, 1360, it says on the sign, established 1360. Scotland's oldest surviving public house, so not just Edinburgh's oldest pub, but it's Scotland's oldest pub. So there you have it, Scotland's oldest pub.
And of course we just had to stop to take a look inside, and here you can see the throne-like seats where the Queen once sat when she visited the pub some years ago. And if that wasn't exciting enough, there's even a bowling alley, an old school bowling alley in the back where you can actually play bowls if you want. You just have to set the pins up again when you leave. But yeah, you can go and have a game of old school bowling.
That was the Sheep's Head. I don't know how you pronounce it without trying to have a Scottish accent. The Sheep's Head. Sheep's Head. So yeah, really cool. Now we're walking next to Duddingston Lock, which is just beyond here. There we go. Let's have a quick look down at the lock. The sun has just gone behind Arthur's seat, thanks to our pit stop in the Sheep's Head. So once again, I think it's fair to say that it's strange to think this is a city, because you feel like you're in the countryside. You can see the Pentland hills in the distance. What are your thoughts on Duddingston?
It's a tiny medieval village that's hidden away inside a capital city. It's pretty cool.
So not that it was needed, but another good reason to do this walk. You can visit Scotland's oldest pub and stop off at Duddingston Lock on the way back. And now we're going to walk around the far side of Arthur's Seat before reaching, I can't remember the name of the, is it Seat? Before reaching
CNS and
before-
then Marchmont.
before reaching CNS and then Marchmont. I think it's pronounced CNS. It's a SCIEN.
MES.
NES. Fresh rockfall off Arthur's Seat. Still falling from all the way up there.
As the road winds around Duddingston Lock, you have some nice views back towards Duddingston Kirk, and you can follow the road around Arthur's Seat to Salisbury Crags, which we hadn't planned on going up, but we decided what the heck, and up we went for some epic views across the city.
We're now on the far side of Arthur's Seat, and you can see there's a cliff walk in the distance. There's people walking up the top there on these cliffs. Pretty dramatic. Really great view out over Edinburgh. Change of plan. We've decided to go up the cliffs.
We've been up to the top of Arthur's Seat several times before, but we've never been to the top of Salisbury Crags, and the view on top of Edinburgh is absolutely amazing and probably has the best views of Edinburgh at sunset. It can be pretty windy up top, so watch your footing if you're walking along this trail. No photo is worth going too close to the edge for. We're out looking across the old town right now, and panning around we can see out across towards Calton Hill and Stockbridge beyond, and Trinity, New Haven, then down towards the port of Leith, and right back towards Portabello, which is behind Arthur's Seat. And then panning further around we see the Pentland Hills. Duddingston's off to the left where we came from. I think you'll agree that this walk is pretty epic as a way to see the real Edinburgh, and what a way to finish the walk by going up Salisbury Crags and having a look out over the entire city. You get such an epic panorama of the old town and the suburbs of Edinburgh and out across the
So
Firth
what do you think
Estuary.
of the cliff walk?
That was absolutely awesome. It looked a lot further than it actually was. And it's a great alternative to going up opposite.
We'd especially recommend coming up here in the evening time. Lights are coming on in the city and the sun's going down. It's quite spectacular.
And very romantic.
So in the end, we've done a detour of our intended route. Not by much, but we have come up here on top of the cliffs instead of going through the various neighbourhoods like the meadows. So this will bring us down towards Holyrood, I believe. Holyrood Palace, which is at the bottom of Arthur's Seat and these hills.
We recommend taking the route that goes behind Holyrood Palace, as you'll get to see this beautiful cobbled laneway surrounded by really old stone walls and old buildings. And yep, that was a bat that just flew overhead. And there he goes again. Just look at the stonework on that gate, it's something else. And that's the thing with Edinburgh, you really need to look up and look around because there's so much detail in the buildings, it's easy to miss.
Just about concludes today's video. We've completed the loop and we are just about back on Leith Walk, just on the London Road right now. I hope you enjoyed today's video.
As always, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
I hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.